back to the Football Tribe UG channel. Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect. Yes, I know it has clocked afternoon, so good afternoon as well, depending on whatever time zone you are in. But yeah, it's a pleasure to be back on yet another wonderful Saturday afternoon. We are 1 hour late due to some, early morning shift engagements that sort of kept me away. So I've been away, just returned, and I said, why not? Let's get this out of the way because we ought to honor the routine. We got to do this. So it's a pleasure to be back on this beautiful Saturday morning, the 25th of October. Thank you so much to those that tuned in last night for our preview for the Arsenal game, the El Clasico, the Manchester City game. It's been a pleasure seeing you around. And then of course, special shout outs to all our new subscribers, those that have recently joined the community. We do appreciate you a great deal. Thank you for choosing to be part of the Football Tribe UG community. And yeah, it's a pleasure to have you around. I hope you do enjoy your stay with us. I hope you go to the channel under the video section, under the short section, under the live section, and watch all our content and give us your feedback because it's what keeps us going. This beautiful morning or afternoon, we will be again going through the weekend preview, what's to come, and what you shouldn't miss out on in as far as football is concerned. I do not know whether the timing is ideal for many of our followers and subscribers, but yeah, when you are not in fun, it doesn't matter. Every time we do come on, for people like LFC, Pedri, I mean, they always spare the time to engage. And we do not take your love and support for granted whatsoever, in whatever regard it does come. So, like I said, over the course of the last couple of days, dating far back to Friday, yesterday morning, evening, we've been doing our previews for some of these games that are bound to come over the course of the weekend. And yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure going through them with you all. For those of you that have been following the conversation online. So I wish to also put across that there's plenty of action, big action to come our weekend. In the Italian Serie A, we have that game between Napoli and Inter Milan. Then we also have the one between Borussia Mönchengladbach and Bayern Munich. Yes, Gladbach may not have been at the sort of levels they were hitting maybe 5 years ago, but they remain a formidable opponent on a given day for Bayern Munich. Then we also have the El Clasico in the Spanish La Liga, a very big game. In the English Premier League, there are no headliners in terms of fixtures that you would say this sort of outweighs all the other fixtures that are to be played during the course of the weekend. But there are those that you look onto and you say it's a must watch. For example, that game between Arsenal and Crystal Palace, Manchester City versus Aston Villa. You do have the game between Man United and Brighton. You do have that Brentford game against Liverpool because of the kind of spell that Liverpool have been under prior to before their victory against Eintracht Frankfurt in midweek during the UEFA Champions League. And then, but there is only one place for us to start, and that is from yesterday night's game between Leeds and West Ham United that ended in victory for Leeds United. What a shambolic piece of defending! What a shambolic game! I mean, West Ham. I do not know whether they. I do not know. Either they want to get the Nuno Espirito Santo sacked. 2, they have a wish to get relegated, which they may achieve. 3, I don't know if those players have not been paid, that they're playing in protest. I mean, you look at the lackluster with which they play in certain phases of the game and you can't help but wonder and think, what the hell is going on at West Ham? It's just poor, just absolute shambolic. They were very poor in their Monday night match against Brentford, which they lost by 2-0. And in this game, within 15 minutes, they were already 2 goals down. Aronson and Rodon, the goal scorers. That second goal being a header. The first goal, the goalkeeper Alfonso Albiora serves sort of an attempt on goal, and then he parries the ball in the direction of just there in the box, and then you could see Aaron Wan-Bissaka, and there was another defender closer to him. And then literally ball watched as Aronson went onto that ball and buried it in the back of the net. And I'm thinking, you must be doing more. That's when you put your body on the line. The goalkeeper has taken the first step. He may not, of course, you could fault the goalkeeper for playing the ball in the direction in which he did, because it was less ideal, or because at least when you're a goalkeeper, you want to parry the ball sideways, towards, the corner or down just that line, but not in front of goal where you can fire back against. But he did the first thing, save the first attempt. Now, the defenders are supposed to help him clear the lines. They're supposed to help him clear whatever it is that he's parried in their direction. And they just stood there and literally watched. I don't know if it was Kilman or Iving that was in that position next to Aaron Wan-Bissaka, but they literally stood and ball watched at the ball went back into the net. Then when you look at the second goal that is scored by Rondon, Lucas Paqueta does not do enough to keep track of Rondon as he runs onto that ball to head it in the back of the net. So again, poor game of display from West Ham, in my opinion. Eventually, they were dominant on the ball, but they lacked the cutting edge. Yes, in the first half, Lucas Paqueta thought had pulled one back for the Hammers, but it was ruled out because he was in an offside position when he gets that ball to score, and of course, goal was ruled out. Then in the 90th minute, Fernandez with I think it was Gerard Boyle that floats in the ball, and Fernandez heads it beyond the reach of the Leeds goalkeeper Perry, who had been booked, I think, for, was it time wasting? I do not know, something. And something like that. So, but the point I want to make is that West Ham are they're just not fighting for it enough. I do not know. And it sort of feels like, when your team is playing that very, very important game that you feel it should be a must win or they shouldn't drop points, and then suddenly they're a goal down from the 10th minute of the game or even the first minute of the game, then until it clocks the 88th minute, then suddenly they begin to show a sense of urgency. Then the referee adds maybe 4 minutes, and the manager of the touchline sort of waves in protest of how few minutes have been added, as if the entire chunk of the other 80 minutes have not been played by the same team. West Ham do not play with that urgency. You did not see the urgency of West Ham trying to get back into the game. You did not see that urgency. You did not see, they constantly putting that ball in the box of Leeds United. They did not do that. They again, in some moments, you felt they were too passive. They conceded possession in a sort of a lackluster manner. When you look at their XG, expected goals, it was 0.65 compared to Leeds' 1.4. I mean, you're playing a team that was playing in the Championship last season. These are the kinds of things that every team going into the season looks at and says, okay, where do I get my points? First of all, to avoid relegation. You look at the newly promoted sides, 3 teams. Now, whereas it is not as easy as it may sound, and nor should it be an expectation or a given that you're just going to beat them home and away, or it's going to be a walkover. But the kinds of games that we expect to see your grit. We expect to see your grit, especially for a team that struggled through last campaign, because when we talk about West Ham United, the struggles have sort of been on for a bit of time. Last season, they finished 14th on the Premier League club. That's where they finished with, they had a tally of about 43 points. Again, it wasn't pretty. It was under Graham Potter. Of course, Graham Potter himself had taken over the reins from Julian Lopetegui, for whom things had not worked out, was shown the exit, and they brought in Graham Potter. Eventually, Graham Potter is sacked for some reasons, poor run of results, just they managed to survive. And then you look at this season, and they're literally, they're playing as if they want to be relegated. Just on paper, when you look at their squad, they do not have the best talent. That goes without saying. But 4 points from 9 games is just poor. I mean, that's 3 defeats in a row under the charges of Nuno Espirito Santo. But when you look at their squad and assess their squad, when you want to assess them as a team, and when you look at their set of results, 3 losses in a row, 2-0 against Arsenal, 2-0 against Brentford, 2-1 against West Ham United. I mean, then you go back to September, they have a 1-1 draw against Everton, they have a 2-1 defeat against Crystal Palace, they have a 3-0 defeat against Tottenham Hotspur. That was on match day 2. And then you have to look, I think, to the Nottingham Forest game, which they won by 3-0. They lost to Chelsea by 5-1. They lost on the opening day of the season by 3-0 against Sunderland. So you played 2 championship teams and you've lost both games. You've lost against Sunderland. Yes, that was an away game, first game of the season, maybe excusable. Then you lose again to Leeds United. Yes, it's an away game once again. But how are you going to amass points? Because like I said yesterday, for those of you that were part of the morning broadcast, and in preview of that game in particular, the subsequent games after that are going to be difficult, because in 5 games, starting from yesterday's game, you have 2 teams that have been newly promoted. And this is what I was saying. Fight your way into getting at least 6 points out of those, because up next, they're going to be playing at home against Newcastle. While Newcastle have not had the greatest of starts to a season, they're a bogey side. They can beat up against any opponent on a given day. And West Ham is one of those teams that you would not expect them to win against. Despite losing to Brighton and Hove Albion last weekend by 2-1. In fact, this weekend they are at home against Fulham. We'll look at that. Then next, you play Burnley. It's a home game. Then after that, you play Bournemouth away at the Vitality Stadium. Difficult game. Then by 30th November, you'll be at home against Liverpool in a difficult game. So you look at those games, and if you're asking me, I would say fight, beat Leeds United. Now, unfortunately, they couldn't beat them. Fight and beat Burnley. If you lose against Newcastle, we would say, yeah, things have not yet clicked for Nuno Espirito Santo. And given how conservative he is, his teams are conceding literally one too many. I must admit, they're not showing that defensive solidity. Maybe it's about the kind of status of players or quality of defenders he does have. Then the game against Bournemouth, maybe go and fight, pick up out a draw, and away to Bournemouth. Then against Liverpool, I do not think many people will come and fault West Ham for losing against Liverpool. Maybe what they would be faulted for is the kind of performance that they may display in the course of the game. But they have to find a way. They ought to find a way in regards to how they go about their business. Of course, injuries are part of it, so you could argue they miss a couple of players here and there. But I mean, Somerville is not delivering. Cam Wilson not delivering. No, Nicholas Fulcru. I mean, one of the worst buys in the Premier League. But by the way, and whoever made that purchase shouldn't be at West Ham anymore. Lewis Guillaume, Gerard Bowen has yet to click in his form. Carl Marshall, youngster, you can't really blame him. You look at their defenders, Jean-Claire Todibo, Aaron Wan-Bissaka, Konstantinos Mavropanos. I mean, we understand he's a bit of, he suffered that injury in their game against Brentford. Malik Hadjioff, Igor Julio, Maximilian Ackerman, Carl Capitals. On paper, when you look at actually most of their players, the sort of is one thing. They went and signed Mads Hermansen from Leicester City to be their number one goalkeeper. This was at a time when they had let go of Lucas Fabianski and all they had was Alfonso Areola. So eventually they signed Lucas Fabianski back. But Alfonso Areola has also under-delivered, but I do not want to entirely blame it on him because the entire team has been shambolic. That's the honest speech. So you look at their midfield, and they have quite the talent. Mateus Fernandes, this was signed, I think, from Wolves. You have Lucas Paqueta. You have James Ward-Prowse. Of course, he's not the James Ward-Prowse we used to see at Southampton. You have Magasa, Rodriguez, Freddie Potts, Thomas Tuchel. Didn't have a good game yesterday, by the way. George Athi, Andy Ivy. I mean, it's mediocre talent. That's honest, the honest bit. But for the caliber of West Ham, these are the caliber of players that they're going to have. Ever since they lost arguably one of their best players ever in Declan Rice, that was in summer 2023. It's like you'll only count on Gerard Boyd to have been the next best thing. Lucas Paqueta was showing signs of brilliance. Manchester City were interested. Then came the charges of breaching the anti-betting rules, and then suddenly he's never been the same player. He's never been impactful. Thomas Tuchel has sort of, gone quiet in a way. They're just struggling. They are just struggling, And there's no way you're going to, 9 games played, you scored 7 goals, 20 conceded. They do not defend well. They do not score. They do not defend well. They do not score. It's just horrible. You look at them play a game of football. And yesterday I did pose the same question. I was wondering, and I did pose this question. Did West Ham play in midweek? Because they played like they had just played the fixture in midweek, possibly on Wednesday or even Thursday. That's how bad they were. They looked tired. They couldn't run in different phases of the game. Just statistically, you look at some of the numbers and say, yeah, but they were dominant in this aspect and that aspect. Yeah, that they were, but it was just poor. It was just not good enough, because if you're going to compare it to Leeds, if you compare it to Leeds, I won't argue otherwise, But my point is, they conceded 5 shots on target, a total. They could only make 3 on target. Big chances created. They had 0 corners, only 4. It's just poor. Nuno Espirito Santo has it all to do to try and correct things in as far as this season is concerned. Is there still time? Obviously, there's still time. But the longer bad results go on, the more frustrated fans will grow, the more possibly they could turn on the manager. We know that they are turning on the owners and things like that. So it's not looking pretty. But anyways, we'll leave that at that and proceed into today's action, because we cannot cry over spirit milk or for West Ham's cries, but they're just poor. They're just poor. Congratulations, Leeds. Anyways, today, like I said, we have no early kickoff. Usually we've been accustomed to the 2:30 p.m. Kind of kickoff. This weekend it's not there. We'll be having games kickoff at 5 p.m. And possibly that early kickoff will come next week. Even next weekend, actually, it won't happen. Actually, time will progress even further ahead to, 6 p.m. You remember there comes a period in that time where you go from the 2:30 p.m. and when the early kickoff becomes at 3:30 p.m. But for the next, for the next couple of weekends, actually, this weekend and next week, we won't have early kickoffs. You will see an early kickoff that will come at 3:30 p.m. On 8th November, when Tottenham Hotspur play Manchester United at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. So you're going to have to be patient for this one. But yeah, that's Tottenham gonna have a difficult set of games coming up, because after this weekend, the next game will be a London derby against Chelsea. And this weekend they're going to be away from home against Everton. So after that, they will have 2 home games against Chelsea and against Manchester United. Difficult set of games. But yeah, at 5 p.m., Chelsea are going to be up against Sunderland, while Newcastle will be up against Fulham. I told you, my expectation is for Chelsea to grind this one out and win it by 2-1. Sunderland are not an easy team to score against, but I believe that with Chelsea's momentum from the last couple of games, including beating up against Liverpool, including beating up against Nottingham Forest, by losing to Brighton, but also beating up against Manchester United, in between there, and the draw against Brentford, plus the victories in the UEFA Champions League. That should be motivation enough to welcome Sunderland at at Stamford Bridge and win a game of football, because you ought to make your home a fortress. You ought to make your home a fortress. But like I've said, these two sides have not met since 2017, when Chelsea beat against Sunderland by 5 goals to 1 and won the reverse fixture by goal to nil. Of course, it's a much different change Sunderland, because when you look at the kind of Chelsea team that played in that game, you still had, I think, the likes of Cesar Aspilicueta, you still had Marcos Alonso, you still had Eden Hazard, those kinds of players, and they're all long term gone. So, yes, Sunderland equally do not have things too bad for themselves, because they've only lost one in the last 5, including 2 draws and 2 victories. So there's some positivity for them, going forward to carry in. And for Chelsea, bearing in mind that the next set of games, will sort of be, I don't want to say too difficult, but I mean, when in your next 5 games, you have to play Sunderland, you have Tottenham Hotspur, you have Wolverhampton Wanderers, Burnley, and Arsenal, and bench sort of fight for those 9 points first. Guarantee those against Sunderland. It's a home game. Wolverhampton Wanderers, Burnley. Yes, there's no easy game in the Premier League, but those should be winnable games for a team like Chelsea. And then fight your way into beating maybe Tottenham Hotspur, or if you pick a draw, nobody's going to give a fuss. Same thing for Arsenal. When you face Arsenal on the 30th of November, fight for that draw, fight for that victory. But even if you had to lose that game, it will be against a very formidable opponent. But at least 10 or 9 points out of a possible 15 isn't too bad a mark, isn't too bad a mark. So Chelsea will play, bearing in mind what's to come in the next couple of weeks. But against Sunderland, I do fancy them to be very, very to go away, to go at home and win that game by at least 2 goals to 1. And by the way, when you look at the last couple of games, they've been scoring the goals. Although they do not keep, they rarely keep a clean sheet. And it's Sunderland. Out of their last 5 games, they've kept 3 clean sheets. And that's why I do think that Sunderland could find a way to score against Chelsea. So that sort of partly informs my 2-1 prediction for Chelsea. I feel that Chelsea will be, at the end of the day, a bit of a stronger opponent for Sunderland, with those João Pedro, Enzo Fernandez, Moises Caicedo, Romeo Lavia, Andre Santos, whichever they choose, Pedro Neto, William Estaval, Jamie Gittens, Garnacho. Garnacho, he sort of struggled to the start of his life at Chelsea. He's hardly had the impact that they would have loved to have, but I do not know whether Enzo Maresca has given up on him just yet. I think it would be too early or premature to give up on him. He needs to adapt. You see, when a player is having a bad spell, there's usually a thin line between cutting him off and then returning them on to keep to show that confidence in them that you do expect or anticipate that sooner rather than later they will be clicking into momentum and that kind of thing. So we'll have to wait and see how things go in that respect or regard for Alejandro Garnacho. But yeah, he needs to do something to improve his fortunes. Score predictions for Barcelona, Real Madrid. Pedri is asking. It's a game that we did preview last night. For those of you that were part of the podcast, but yeah, we're going to revisit that fixture because it's that big a fixture. Let's just wrap up things here in the Premier League, and then we'll get to the El Clasico, where Barcelona took all the bragging rights from last season. Although I sort of feel it may not be the case this season, but like I said, we'll get to that in a minute. Anyways, in the other kickoff, Newcastle at home against Fulham. Yes, Fulham is one of those teams that beat up against Newcastle last season, and yeah, they will come into that fixture. Well knowing that last season, Fulham went to St James's Park and beat them by 2 goals to 1, while really having beaten them 3-1 in the reverse fixture. So they beat them home and away. However, I do not expect there to be the same occurrence because we're talking about a very, very tonight's podcast. I'll be present for sure. I will talk about tomorrow's game. All right. yeah, we'll continue to talk about it until it does eventually happen, because it's that big a game. There's a lot that the world anticipates or looks forward to when that game comes. But we'll again speak on it even today. So for Fulham have just had. I think they arguably have one of the worst run of forms in recent games, because they have 2 victories and they have 3 losses. So Newcastle on the other side, yes, they have 2 losses as well. They have 2 victories and 1 draw. So you can see that the difference is very, very minimal, but I'm expecting Newcastle to fight their way through this one and win by at least 2-1 or 3-1. We're talking about a Newcastle side that just beat up against Benfica by 3 goals to 0 in the UEFA Champions League. So that's my prediction for that game. Man United versus Brighton, again, another exciting game to watch. I've seen many people give the game to Brighton in terms to win. I mean, it wouldn't be too wild if indeed Brighton won. It wouldn't be very unexpected, but I'm going to go. For me, I went Manchester United to win by 2 goals to 1. And my reasons particularly for that is that they've built them some bit of fair momentum. They've won 3 games consecutively at Old Trafford. That's for starters. 2, for the first time under Ruben Amorim, they've won 2 consecutive games, having beaten up against Sunderland and against Liverpool. So they're in that sort of feel-good factor moment. You look at but when you look at the last 5 meetings between Manchester United and Brighton, last season Brighton beat them home and away. Then you go back to last season, but United won it away, Brighton won it away. So, in other words, Brighton are unbeaten in their last 2 visits to Old Trafford. So that should scare you. It should scare you. But like I said, I've recognized a few patterns of play, how they narrow down that pitch, how they press against teams, and if you fall for that trap, they're going to punish you. They're going to punish you. So we saw Liverpool struggle through that because they narrowed that pitch between Casemiro, Bruno Fernandes, Matas Cunha, who was sort of the target man, but in there was Brandon Mbumo and Mason Mount in that crowded midfield, and then you had these wing backs of Amadou Diallo, and then I think it was Diego Dallo, in that game. So they looked okay. They looked okay. In fact, they should have scored more. They should have scored more. They should have scored more. So and if Brighton, regardless of their fairly decent form in recent games, having beaten up against Newcastle, beaten up against Chelsea, drawn against Tottenham and against Wolverhampton Wanderers, games that they should have won, because for that game against Tottenham, they led that game by 2 goals to 0. All that notwithstanding, Fabian Hatzler, he knows it will be a difficult game. I do not know. I'm going into a certain belief, and it's not confidence, but it's more of hope. I don't know if it's hope, but it's that anticipation that Man United could win another game. I mean, it's at Old Trafford. They've only lost there 1 game this season, by the way, and that was the game against Arsenal. So that should tell you that they are trying to create an environment, a winning environment, and with that crowd behind them, is why I'm going for Manchester United victory. 2 goals to 1. Wow, looks like I have too many 2-1s so far. Liverpool versus Brentford. Away for Liverpool, I've gone Liverpool to win this game by 3 goals to 1. That's my anticipation. I think they're going to carry that feel-good factor, that bit of, motivation from that 5-1 victory against Eintracht Frankfurt from the UEFA Champions League. Just Brentford will be a totally different opponent. I think they will deploy their back 5. They'll be very, very conservative. They'll play with the low block, but Liverpool will find a way to break those lines. The likes of Cody Gakpo, Vlahovic, if he can replicate that slight form, but that slight luck that he had against Frankfurt, providing the 2 assists for Alexis McAllister, and I think who the other was. For as Liverpool clinched that victory. However, again, I'm thinking Hugo Ekitike must start, regardless of how Arne Slot chooses his team. I think Hugo Ekitike must start. Maybe Alexander Isak is sacrificed. I do not know how he goes fully fledged into an attacking kind of team mindset. We'll wait and see how he assesses that team, but we do not expect Arne Slot to come in the aftermath of the game to complain about, to moan about, low blocks, long balls, set pieces, and things like that. No, we do not expect that, none whatsoever. And then tomorrow, Sunday, Super Sunday, like I said, Arsenal versus Crystal Palace. We previewed this game in its entirety last night. For those of you that want more views on that, please go to the channel. Under the live section, you will find that exclusive video, particularly discussing Arsenal, of course, Manchester City in addition, and the El Clasico from last night, because that is where our focus was in as far as the weekend previews are concerned. Nonetheless, I cannot hesitate to mention that Arsenal could be without Gabriel Magalhaes, who is very, very integral in the way they attack set pieces in the opponent's box, with, of course, relying on the brilliant deliveries of Declan Rice and Declan Rice and Bukayo Saka, who've been very, very immaculate in their deliveries in as far as set piece is concerned. For those criticizing Arsenal for their set piece play, I've said this before and I'll say it again without any fear of contradiction. They are part of the game. You play to your strength. If you think your strength is set pieces, go and do that. And for those of you that have watched the Premier League long enough, you will know that Arsenal used to struggle scoring from corner kicks. In fact, if you are an Arsenal fan, you always wondered why Arsenal even won corners in the first place, because they literally had nothing to do with them. They could never utilize them. Oftentimes they went short for short corner and things like that. But floating in the ball, having players attack it and score, and their goal from a set piece play would come once in a while, like rain in a desert, in that sort of sense. That's how bad it was. And then suddenly things have flipped under Mikel Arteta, and people want to lead you to believe that Arsenal won just because they score from set pieces. If they are winning so many penalties, then the goalpost would be shifted. Oh, they're being given so many penalties and things like that. It's all football. You deserve what you get. If Arsenal think set pieces are what going to get them over the line, so be it. But they do face a very, very stubborn side in Crystal Palace, who lost against Lanaka in the UEFA Conference League in midweek. But Arsenal also have that very good factor about them having beaten up against Atletico de Madrid by 4 goals to nil in the UEFA Champions League. Very, very decent performance from the Gunners, especially in the second half. Those 14 minutes in which they scored all those 4 goals. Crystal Palace on the other side, having rested or started them on the bench, Taichi Kamada and Adam Watton, they'll be hoping for more energy. Of course, Arsenal, the more rested team here, having played on Tuesday, while Crystal Palace played on Thursday. The game comes at 5 p.m. East African time on Super Sunday. Same for Manchester City away to Aston Villa. But like I told you yesterday, I went for 2-1 victory for Arsenal. Crystal Palace conceded a good chunk of goals. In fact, in the last game, they conceded 3 against Bournemouth in that 3-all draw. Then they conceded another 2 against Everton as they lost their first game of the season by 2 goals to 1. So I went for an Arsenal victory, given how Arsenal have been dominant in the last 5 fixtures against Crystal Palace, having won 4 and drawn 1. The draw coming in a 2-all draw against, at the Emirates Stadium last season. And I told you that Arsenal this season are trying and looking to correct some of the mistakes that cost them the Premier League title last season. And among those mistakes was dropping points against some of these teams, like Crystal Palace. So you have them at home, beat them, put 3 points on board instead of 2 like you did, instead of dropping 2 like you did last season, and things like that. Manchester City versus Aston Villa. This one I went for a 1-all draw between the two sides. Aston Villa have been in very, very decent form, but they did lose in midweek, and that was on Thursday when they lost to Go Ahead Eagles from the Dutch Eredivisie. They lost that game, while Manchester City, in sharp contrast, went to Spain and beat up against Villarreal by 2 goals to nil. But Erling Haaland and the captain Bernardo Silva on target in that one. We're talking about the Manchester City side who are unbeaten in the last 5 Premier League outings. They have kept 3 clean sheets. They beat up against Man United by 3 goals to nil. They beat up against Brentford by a goal to nil. Last weekend they beat up against Everton by 2 goals to nil. But Erling Haaland being the standout performer in all those, and then in between there you find the 5-1 victory against Burnley and 1-all draw against Arsenal. Then on the side of Aston Villa, they are equally unbeaten in their last 5, winning 3 and drawing 2. So you can see that we're having 2 of the most informed teams in as far as the Premier League is concerned meet. Last season, each of them won their respective fixture at home, with Aston Villa beating up against Manchester City from Villa Park by 2 goals to 1, while Man City won the reverse fixture by a similar scoreline. When we go back to last season, but one, Manchester City beat up against Aston Villa by 4 goals to 1, while Aston Villa won the home game by a goal to nil. So usually, when you look at the last recent statistics, you'll find that the home team usually takes the advantage and wins their game. However, I feel that this time around they could cancel out each other, even though they've not been a single draw in their last 5. In fact, in the 50 games played between them, as far as the Premier League is concerned, you'll find only 10 draws, but you'll find 31 victories for Manchester City and 9 for Aston Villa. So clearly, you could see how the balance of power is in the favor of Manchester City, although I've gone for a 1-all draw in this game. And then Bournemouth up against Nottingham Forest. This one, I don't remember. Had I gone for a draw? I don't know. Yeah, I went for a 1-all draw. Nottingham Forest winning their second game of the season after beating up against FC Porto by 2 goals to nil. FC Porto were 11 games unbeaten so far this season across all competitions, but they managed to get it over the line with Igor Jesus scoring from the penalty spot in the second half, just like Morgan Gibbs-White had done in the first half to win that game by 2 goals to nil. They did not concede a goal. So, I mean, their first clean sheet in ages. So, Sean Dyche is, again, going to make them very, very difficult to score against. I think they will be very, very combative. They'll look to leverage Bournemouth on set pieces or try and win, dead ball situations, things like that. So, yeah, Sean Dyche is stamping his mark on the club. He's already made some, backroom changes in terms of rules, no caps allowed, what not. Every manager comes with their non-negotiables, as Mikel Arteta once put it. So, I've gone for 1-all draw in that one. Bournemouth versus Nottingham Forest. I've gone for a 1-all draw. Then Wolverhampton Wanderers versus Burnley. If Wolves cannot win this game, then what on God's green earth is Vitor Pereira still doing at Wolverhampton Wanderers? They've had a horrible start to the season. 8 games played, none won, 2 draws, and they are bottom of the Premier League log. On the other side, Scott Parker will be looking to try and get another victory when they face off with Wolverhampton Wanderers. They do come in this particular weekend off the back of a 2-0 victory. That's for Burnley against Leeds United. So they must be thinking that this is another opportunity to win 3 points. That's how they should be looking at it, because it is another opportunity to win 3 points against arguably the weakest side in the Premier League. We're talking about a side that Sunderland beat up against last weekend by 2 goals to nil. So if you're Burnley, you look at that and say, yeah, we beat up against Sunderland, although it was a home fixture. That comparison should be motivating us to go to Wolves and pick a point. In fact, when you look at their last 5 meetings, you'll find that Burnley have won 2 of those fixtures. Have won 2 of those fixtures. 1-2 twice. It has ended in a draw, with Wolves only winning 1. So in this one, I'm going for 2-1 Burnley to win. Then in the last kickoff, the late kickoff from Super Sunday is Everton versus Tottenham Hotspur, a very, very conservative Tottenham Hotspur side who survived because AC Monaco couldn't be clinical in their game in the UEFA Champions League in midweek. So then Everton on the back of losing that game against Manchester City by 2-0, those goals scored by Erling Haaland will be looking to bounce back to reclaim victory because prior to losing to Manchester City, they had beaten up against Crystal Palace by 2-1. You went things further back, a 1-all draw with West Ham, and having lost to Liverpool by 2-1 and another draw prior to that. Again, like I said, Tottenham Hotspurs, they lost to Aston Villa by 2-1. They beat up against Leeds by a similar scoreline, drew against Wolves, and they needed a late equalizer from Joao Paulina to pick a point from that game against Wolves, and then a 2-all draw against Brighton and Hove Albion, a game in which they went to kneel down and beating up against West Ham. When you look at the last couple of meetings between the two sides, there's a 3-2 victory for Everton at Goodson Park last season, but remember they are now at the new Hugh Dixon Stadium. While Tottenham won the reverse fixture earlier on by 4-0, there's a 2-all draw, there's a 2-1 victory for and a 1-all draw. So I'm going for another 1-all draw in this particular fixture. That's what I think. Jack Grealish will have been well rested, having been suspended for the game against Manchester City. Sorry, not suspended, but he had to miss it because he is a Manchester City player on loan to Everton. So having been well rested, he should come back to give Tottenham a run for their money in that regard. So do expect that to be very, very entertaining piece of action. Then also, okay, quickly. Like I said, the Spanish La Liga does get underway as well today. Do not miss out on all that action that is coming your way. Girona up against Real Oviedo, Elche against Espanyol, but Athletic Bilbao and Getafe will be a game to watch, as well as Valencia up against the Yellow Submarines of Villarreal. In the Italian Serie A at 7 p.m. East African time. Do not miss out on that game between do not miss out on that game. Do not miss out on that game between Napoli and Inter Milan. Very, very exciting fixture for us to look forward to. One that you shouldn't miss whatsoever. Inter Milan are second, Napoli are third. All have 15 points. AC Milan last night. I mean, you see, I don't know. This is what makes people bet. How do you guys do it? Because there was this overarching expectation that AC Milan were going to beat up against Pisa. And yet they needed a late equalizer to even salvage a point. They needed a late equalizer in the 3rd minute of stoppage time to pick a point. So, anyways, it is what it is. And then on Super Sunday, like I've told you time and again, we do have the El Clasico, a fixture that Barcelona dominated last season, beating Real Madrid in whatever form or shape they found them, in whatever competition they found them, in the Supercopa España, in the Copa del Rey final, home and away in the Spanish La Liga. I think even if they had met each other at dinner, Barcelona would still beat Real Madrid. That's how poor Real Madrid were in terms of facing their arch nemesis in Barcelona last season. It is, I do want to believe, one of the critical factors as to why they decided to part ways with Carlo Ancelotti. So Xabi Alonso himself, having played in this particular fixture, remember he did leave Liverpool to join Real Madrid and played there for quite some time. I think until the end of 2014, when they won the La Decima, their UEFA Champions League, 10th UEFA Champions League title. And then he left after that and joined by Bayern Munich, where he played under Pep Guardiola, between 2014 and 2017 when he retired from football, and then returned to Real Madrid as the youth team coach for the under 14. And then from there, he left for around 2018. He joined Real Sociedad And then from Sociedad, he went to Sociedad B team, and then from there, that's when he went to Bayer Leverkusen, where he did all the wonders, where that earned him all the applauses and plaudits that he does deserve in the game of football as one of the modern, winning coaches, having guided Bayer Leverkusen to a double in 2023-2024, winning the German Bundesliga and the DFB Pokal. So yeah. Then also, so Xabi Alonso will know one too well what it means to play in that fixture. They've not drawn a game. I've not gone for a draw. My prediction is still a 2-1 victory. Sorry, a 2-1 victory for Real Madrid in that particular fixture. Two teams that are troubled with so many injuries. Dani Carvajal, Dani Ceballos. That's on the side of Real Madrid. You do have Dinhausen, Raul Asensio, Antonio Rudiger, Alexander Trent-Arnold, all absolute injury on the side of Barcelona. Marc-Andre ter Stegen, Gavi, Joao Garcia, Rafinha is back in training. I do not know whether he will be fully fit for this one. Dani Olmo, Robert Lewandowski, Jules Koundé could return, but in how they could set up over the weekend at the Santiago Bernabeu, where Barcelona beat up against Real Madrid by 4 goals to nil last season. They want to recoup their reputation. It will be Thibaut Courtois in goal that we do expect. Fede Valverde at right back, possibly Dinhausen alongside Eder Militao, Alvaro Carreras to retain his left back position, Jude Bellingham, Aurelio Tchouameni, and Adagula, then Kylian Mbappe, Franco Mastantuano, and Vinicius Junior. I mean, we could see Brahim Diaz, who started against Juventus, instead of Franco Mastantuano. Anything can happen. Then on the side of Barcelona, Wojciech Szczesny in goal should be expected. Alejandro Balde, Eric Garcia alongside Pau Kubasi, and Ronald Araujo, Frankie de Jong alongside Pedri in that midfield, Marcus Rashford, Fermin Lopez, Lamine Yamal, and Ferran Torres. Yeah, should be a good enough team to compete, but like I said, I'm going for a 2-1 victory for Real Madrid in that fixture. I think, of course, Pedri and Frankie de Jong, if they go on to have an immaculate game, as well as Lamine Yamal, then Real Madrid will be given a run for their money. So, but I look at it and I think that then Real Madrid desperately need to redeem their reputation following what happened last season. They lost Copa del Rey final 3 goals to 2. Supercopa Hispana, they were humiliated, beaten 5-2. Spanish La Liga 4-0 at the Bernabeu, 4-3, I think, away to the Olympic Stadium where Barcelona hosted them. I mean, it was just an embarrassment. It was just defeat after defeat. Everywhere they found Barcelona, they literally kept. They bowed their knees and said, here we are. Beat us the way you want. And Barcelona obliged. So Barcelona obliged, and that's why we experienced what we did experience. So yeah. So do let me know what your predictions are, what your thoughts are in as far as this particular fixture is concerned. And yeah, I will keep you posted. Go down to the comment section, give us your comments. I will respond. Oftentimes I spare the time to go under our community section and I respond to your comments. If it's a topic that requires us discussing exclusively, I have done that on multiple occasions. So yeah, we'll do that. So please continue commenting on our content. The more you comment, the more you like the videos, the more YouTube recommends them to new viewers. Like I told you, our objective now is to push for the 4,000 hours of watch time. That's the objective. That's what we're pushing for. We want to get there. We want to eventually monetize. That's the objective in in the coming months, at least. I've not put a timeline on it because there's certain things I want to happen in place, but we'll keep pushing. We'll keep pushing to achieve that. Otherwise, it's been a nice engagement. Thank you so much, Pedri. Thank you so much, Sarkos Podcast, for sparing the time to be with us and putting in your comments. But yeah, we will continue to engage later tonight at 11 p.m. We will be back. Then Sunday we do not do a morning broadcast, so do not expect one unless otherwise, but do not be expecting it. So yeah, have yourselves a blessed weekend. Go and enjoy those games respectively. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye for now. Stay blessed.